Recording in progress.
Suffisant dans cette personne. De tout. Non, j'ai ça dans la voiture, sinon j'ai ça dans la voiture.
Good morning. Welcome to this press briefing of the UN Information Service here in Geneva. Today is Friday, 15th of December. And I would like to start by introducing you a new colleague that has joined our Geneva communication family very recently. Her name is Zaina Awad. She is the new Chief of News and Media at the ILO. She's here with me. I'll give her the floor to introduce herself. As you know, our friend and good colleague, Rosalind Yarde, has retired a month ago. And Zaina is the new chief. And I'll give her the floor for introducing herself.
Merci beaucoup, Alessandra, et enchantée de faire votre connaissance. It's nice to meet you. As Alessandra just mentioned, I am new in Geneva. I'm the new Chief of News and Media for the ILO, but I'm not new to the UN family. In fact, I'm returning to the UN family after a couple of years of teaching journalism at Northwestern University. Previously, I served with UNICEF in Iraq and with the UN Secretariat in Somalia and East Africa. And I'm a former longtime TV journalist as well. So it's wonderful to be with you, and I look forward to working with all of you quite closely. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Zaina. And I'm told that as soon as Zaina will have her cell phone and other contact details, ILO will inform you, and we will also include her, of course, in our correspondence. Thank you very much, Zaina. Good luck with your new tenure. And I'd like to continue now with UNICEF and invite Marixie and her guests. Yes?
Hello.
Hello, please. So we have the pleasure to have with us Ted Chaiban, who is the UNICEF Deputy Executive Director for Humanitarian Action and Supply Operations. And you're here to tell us more, sir, about the global humanitarian appeal of UNICEF for children affected by conflict and disaster. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good day. In my entire 25-year career in UNICEF, it is hard to recall a year in which the situation facing children affected by conflict and disaster, including due to climate, has been more dire. For humanitarian organization, work has rarely been more important and perhaps never more complex. The horrendous situation in Gaza, which takes us to the core of our humanity, exemplifies this. Earlier this week, UNICEF launched a 9.3 billion emergency funding appeal to reach at least 94 million children in 155 countries. Yet at a time where humanitarian and protection needs have never been greater, we are approaching 2024 facing an increasingly bleak funding forecast. Flexible funding, which allows us to respond at speed, scale, and nimbleness, is shrinking, restricting our ability to respond quickly and ensure principled action based on needs. And humanitarian actors' ability to safely reach affected population where there is increasingly at risk, and we continue to see attacks against humanitarian actors around the world. Throughout the year, children around the world have faced rampant violations and denials of their rights. In November, I spent a week in Ukraine, where I went to frontline areas in Kharkiv and Zaporizhzhia and stressed the urgent needs for continued humanitarian response to conflict-affected areas there. In October, I went into Gaza, where we have seen an unprecedented number of children reportedly killed in the continuing violence. In July, I met families in Sudan, where millions of children have been forced from their homes in what is now the largest child displacement crisis in the world. Beyond these headline-grabbing areas affected by conflict and other crises, there are children suffering elsewhere as well. This year, I met children in Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Chad, and Mali. Such devastating conflicts, combined with a rise in climate-related disaster, disease outbreaks, and displacement, mean children continue to endure the unimaginable threat and impact of protracted crises and climate-related threats. In all of these contexts, UNICEF is on the ground, providing children and families with essential life-saving aid and exploring innovative solutions to challenge and problems that have plagued humanity for centuries. But at a time when humanitarian protection needs have never been greater, we are concerned that our ability to meet these needs is going to come under increasing strain. Among the most critically underfunded emergencies right now, we have Sudan, Burkina Faso, Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Haiti, Ethiopia, Yemen, Somalia, South Sudan, and Bangladesh. UNICEF and our partners are committed to providing a comprehensive response to the many humanitarian crises affecting children, but these children should not be paying the price of our inaction with their lives and their futures. They need continued access to essential services like healthcare, safe water, basic sanitation, education, and protection. When I was in Sudan, I met a 12-year-old boy called Mahmoud in a temporary learning center outside of Atbara. He was continuing his learning on an e-tablet. But what struck me was the image he had drawn, and it was a really faithful replication of his neighborhood, down to the pharmacy across the street from his house that had been bombed out, and the little parking lot where he played football. And all he wanted was to be able to go back to that place and a sense of normalcy. And when I was in Gaza with our executive director, Kathy Russell, we met a 16-year-old. She had a brace. She was in bed, and she had been hit by shrapnel in the back, and she's never going to walk again. These children should not be going through this. We live in a world where we need to do everything possible, work with every fiber in our bodies so that children like that don't have to go through these kind of situations. Thank you.
Absolutely, very dire situation. So I will open now the floor to questions in the room first. And online, I see Nick Cumming-Bruce is our correspondent of the New York Times. Nick, you have the floor.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Yeah, could you give us some numbers? I mean, is funding...
Just 1 second, Nick. Go ahead, sorry.
Is your funding going down in absolute terms, or is it rising and just is less in relation to your overall requirement? And secondly, what does this tell you really about interest in multinational funding solutions? It seems to me that a lot more funding is going through bilateral channels. And do you feel that essentially you're losing, the plot for that? Thank you.
So if you look at the absolute amount of funding, it's flat for UNICEF. What is rising is needs. And actually what we've done this year is taken a really hard look at requirements and done our best to prioritize. So the appeal this year of 9.3 billion is actually a 16% decrease over what we appealed for last year, not because needs have decreased, but because we've really tried to focus on how we can be most effective in responding to those needs, where it's absolutely essential that UNICEF is the best place to respond to those needs, and how we can work in partnership with others to, if you will, be more efficient in the way we operate. In terms of whether or not there's less funding going through the multilateral system, the UN, including UNICEF, continues to be one of the major sources and conduit through which the world addresses crises. We stay and deliver in countries throughout the world, including in Gaza as we speak today, and Sudan as we speak today. I don't think there's been a market shift, certainly in humanitarian funding, from the multilateral system to other sources of funding. I think what we're seeing is increased need in a fiscally tight space, affected by increasing instability because of conflict and climate, the overhang of COVID, and the economic consequences of COVID. If you will, it's a triple threat that children around the world are facing.
Thank you very much. Lisa Schlein, Voice of America.
Thank you. Good morning. If you don't have the money, which you apparently don't, to take care of these many children, by the way, how many children is the appeal for, the $9.3 billion appeal, and in how many countries? Also, what I was wondering is, what are the programs that get cut? Clearly, you can't provide the children with all that they need. Also, are the funds earmarked for different countries? And if that is the case, you mentioned countries that are the most disfavored. Which are the ones that do get the most money? Thank you.
So in terms of the number of children that we are working to reach this year, it's 94 million children. The 94 million children are in 30 countries. And in addition to that, we have 5 multi-country appeals, so if you will, regional appeals. So we work throughout the world, but those are the countries that are the most affected, where we concentrate the most of our work. We don't cut programs by area. We continue to work in health, in nutrition, in water sanitation and hygiene, in education, and in protection. But what we look at is, where is it absolutely necessary that our interventions reach the most vulnerable children? And that means, for example, making choices with what are the essential interventions, ensuring, for example, that immunization continues to be available, that primary health care continues to function, that children have access to treatment against severe acute malnutrition, and that some of the basics around child protection, psychosocial support, mental health, addressing grave violations against children, recruitment of children by armed groups, as well as education, which is a life-saving intervention in emergencies, that all those continue to exist. But for example, there's certain activities that we would like to be able to sustain, say cash transfers to victims of sexual and gender-based violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo, facing one of the most horrible protection crises in the world. We may not be able to sustain such an operation, so find other ways to provide support to the survivors of such horrible crimes. Our funding for last year, we were at roughly 50%. For this year, rather, we're at roughly 50% of the total appeal, and that's why indeed we've cut down by 16% what we are focused on and we're prioritizing. It still makes a huge difference. It still makes a huge difference what we do get. And again, through this prioritization, through trying to increase efficiency, we are working on what is most essential for children.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other question for UNICEF? I don't see any, so thank you very much for coming and for launching this appeal, and we count on our journalists to relay it, of course. Thank you. So let me go now to WHO. We have with us Tariq, and he has brought Dr. Rosamund Lewis, who is the WHO technical lead for monkeypox and pox. And she's going to tell us about mpox situation, including current outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You have the floor, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you very much. You all recall that the global outbreak of mpox, which started in May 2022, affected more than 92,000 people in now 117 countries. Cambodia is the most recent country to report their first case just this week. We also have a reported situation on a cruise ship with an mpox outbreak on a cruise ship in Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific, which we can come back to in a moment. For the Democratic Republic of the Congo, WHO has undertaken a mission there, a joint multidisciplinary mission with the Ministry of Health and all components, 3 levels of WHO, regional office, country office, and headquarters. In that mission, we have assessed over several weeks the situation regarding Mpox in the country, and have come up with the conclusions that are quite concerning. There's a rapidly expanding outbreak in the country. This year, the country has reported over 13,000 clinically compatible suspected cases of Mpox, which is more than twice the number previously reported in any prior year, and over 600 deaths among those cases. The outbreak is expanding in addition to more numbers of cases in endemic areas. The outbreak is also expanding geographically into new provinces that are not previously affected. So that includes, for example, 3 new provinces, Lualaba, Kinshasa province, and South Kivu. Really that's 23 out of the 26 provinces now reporting Mpox in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In addition to this geographic expansion and rising numbers of cases, there is also, for the first time, confirmation of a sexual transmission of this particular clade of the virus. You may recall that there are 2 clades, clade 1, which is Central African clade, and clade 2, previously known as West African clade. Clade 2 is the one that went around the world. So now in Central Africa, we are for the first time seeing sexual transmission among the patients who are having clade 1 of the monkeypox virus, or Mpox due to clade 1 of the virus. This is, of course, very concerning because of the accelerated transmission when transmitted through sexual networks. In the case of the DRC, the networks most affected involve sex workers, and notably female sex workers. So the demographic picture of the outbreak in the DRC in the newly affected areas is concerning. It's the first time we have seen Mpox being reported in more women than in men. And in South Kivu, for example, it's exclusively among adults, whereas in the endemic areas, we still see the classic picture of Mpox with large numbers of children affected. 70% of the cases in the endemic areas remain in children under 15, and mostly in children under 5. Likewise, for the deaths reported, the case fatality ratio in the country is much higher than anywhere else in the world. You might recall that in the global outbreak, it was under 1%, 0.18% to be precise, and still matches that figure today. But in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with the 600 deaths reported this year, we're looking at a case fatality ratio of around 5%. So much, much higher. And in the most endemic areas, it's over 8%, almost 9%. So we're looking at a very high case fatality ratio for a virus. This particular clade is already known to be more virulent than the one that went around the world. So we can appreciate that this represents a public health risk for the people of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, for neighboring countries, including, for example, Burundi, Rwanda, Angola, where there's a lot of population movements over the borders, including sex workers themselves are also very mobile when they need to seek work. And so there is concern of possible transmission in other countries in the neighboring area around Democratic Republic of Congo, including Congo-Brazzaville across the river. This also represents a risk for the rest of the world because we've already seen what can happen with Mpox when it enters networks that have frequent and close contact, physical contact, and we're seeing this also in the DRC. There are some cases among men who have sex with men in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They are also contributing to the outbreak, but primarily we're concerned about the major increase in cases in the endemic area, as well as among sex workers in previously unaffected areas. Kinshasa, the capital, also has had an outbreak, and there is concern that there may also be continuing low-level transmission there because work needs to be done to raise the awareness and understanding of health workers who have not previously had to deal with or consider Mpox as a sexually transmissible infection. So there's a lot of work ongoing already in the country to train health workers and to raise awareness of communities. As you know, sexual transmission was already documented in Nigeria and, of course, in the global outbreak. So this is the latest evolution of this concerning feature of this emerging orthopox virus, which was similar to smallpox in the past. And part of the concern that we have here is that the virus may continue to evolve, as we have seen with clade 2. If that were to happen with clade 1, we're not really sure yet what that would look like. So there is an urgent need in this country to invest in surveillance, laboratory testing, laboratory capacity, development of rapid tests, also risk communication, community engagement is critically important. It's a complex situation, complex outbreak, and therefore there needs to be engagement of the different communities men who have sex with men, sex workers, people working in areas where they go to seek employment and don't realize that there may be a new risk facing them, as well as those who are in the endemic areas, mostly children very much at risk in those areas. So WHO is continuing to work with the Ministry of Health in all areas of the response, including working towards access to countermeasures. We're talking about Mpox vaccines and therapeutics. There are trials for therapeutics ongoing around the world, but they have slowed down because thankfully the number of cases have slowed down. The one trial that is really continuing to recruit patients faster than expected is in fact the trial in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So we're looking forward to receiving results on the effectiveness of the therapeutic called tecovirimat from the DRC early in the new year. And finally, vaccines, of course, have been made available to other populations around the world. The Democratic Republic of the Congo does not have access to these vaccines yet, just like many other countries don't yet have access. And so work is being done with the regulatory authorities and with the Ministry of Health towards developing an immunization strategy and approving importation of products into the country. I think that's what I have for you now. Really important to continue engaging with the country and with the communities affected in the country. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you like. Et je pourrais aussi répondre à des questions en français si ça peut être utile. Merci.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. Indeed, I open the floor to question. First to the journalist here. I don't see any, so I'll go to the platform. Elaine Fletcher.
Hi, Rosamond. Elaine Fletcher from Health Policy Watch. Last year, when we were dealing with this issue, the main producer of the vaccine, of the most effective vaccine, Bavarian Nordic, had limited capacity. It had stopped production altogether because of renovations in its plant. And it didn't seem to be interested in giving out a license to anybody else. What's happening with that vaccine chokehold today?
Thank you for the question. So the manufacturer is very interested in engaging with WHO to continue to make vaccines more available. So production capacity is being increased. They found a way to increase production capacity fivefold. And so they are working on that, and we'll also secure licensing for that new process. So that is a development that we're actively looking forward to, obviously, as well as increasing access, as I mentioned, through regulatory procedures, as well as many countries around the world that did procure the vaccine are in fact now also ready to offer vaccine to low middle income countries. We're also working with Gavi on their assessment of the situation.
Lisa Schlein, Voice of America.
Good morning. You said that monkeypox doesn't stay where it is in the country, that it represents a risk to the rest of the world. Would you elaborate upon this? Is this a situation where ultimately, if it is allowed to spread from one country to another, that it could pose an international public health risk, as other diseases have been designated, most recently COVID? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. You may recall that there was, in fact, a public health emergency of international concern declared also for Mpox last year in 2022, from June or July of that year through to May of 2023. That was the status. As the capacity to respond to that outbreak improved and the number of cases declined, that capacity was lifted. However, for WHO, the Mpox global outbreak is still considered an ongoing emergency. And this new situation with this new, not new clade, but this more virulent clade, this new situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is therefore very concerning in that regard. We have already seen what Mpox can do. And so I don't have a crystal ball, but yes, we are concerned that this outbreak in the DRC may eventually behave the same way. We don't know exactly what transpired in the 5 years prior to the global outbreak of clade 2, but we do know that there was ongoing transmission, newly emerging ongoing transmission in Nigeria since 2017 up to 2021. And so the outbreak in 2022, while it came as a surprise, the format in which it came, the way in which it transmitted, it was not at the end surprising that it emerged globally. And so we are concerned that there may be further international transmission of this clade 1 also from the country where it is most commonly reported.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. Yuria Prelev, RIA Novosti.
Oui, bonjour Madame Lewis, je vais profiter de pouvoir vous poser la question en français. Vous expliquiez du coup dans votre présentation sur ce qui concerne la RDC que les cas sont en augmentation, mais dans le monde, de ce qu'on a pu comprendre sur les dernières publications de l'OMS, les chiffres sont en baisse. Est-ce que cette tendance est toujours actuelle? Et est-ce que vos préoccupations du coup ne sont concernées que, entre guillemets, la situation en DRC et cette nouvelle donne sur ce variant du virus? Merci.
Merci. Effectivement, globalement, les chiffres ont beaucoup baissé en fin 2022 et début 2023 pour les cas de variole simienne ou variole du singe dû au variant 2. Mais effectivement, pendant, on va dire, l'été, dans l'hémisphère nord, juin, juillet, août 2023, les cas notifiés à l'OMS étaient une centaine par mois. Maintenant, nous sommes à plus que 1000 par mois. Donc, il y a effectivement des nouvelles épidémies, des nouvelles flambées qui se sont déclarées en Asie, au Japon, au Vietnam, la Chine, l'Indonésie. Voilà, et nous avons, comme j'ai dit tout à l'heure, un 117e pays qui déclare un premier cas. Ça, c'est le Cambodge. Donc, le virus clade 2 circule toujours. Il peut encore circuler. Et la majorité des endroits ont encore la grande majorité de leur population à risque. Maintenant, nous savons que ce virus se transmet notamment par contact direct et le contact sexuel est effectivement une façon efficace pour le virus de se transmettre. Donc, le risque pour la population générale à l'échelle mondiale reste bas, mais pour les hommes ayant des relations avec des hommes, le risque quand même demeure modéré. Il y a quand même un risque que ces personnes-là qui n'ont pas eu le vaccin ou qui n'ont pas été déjà infectées auparavant demeurent susceptibles de contracter la variole simienne. Et donc, ça veut dire que le nombre de cas maintenant en RDC, à l'échelle mondiale, nous avons donné, sur les rapports de situation réguliers, nous avons donné le nombre de cas confirmés. En RDC, seulement 9% des cas ont acheminé, les spécimens sont acheminés vers un laboratoire. Il n'y a pas la capacité dans cet immense pays très rural, très étendu, de tester au laboratoire chaque cas suspect. Mais la définition de cas, elle est très claire. Et donc, on considère, pour les besoins de l'épidémiologie, que les cas suspects en RDC collent très bien à la définition de cas et sont effectivement des cas compatibles cliniquement à être des vrais cas de variole simienne pour la grande majorité. 65% et plus sont confirmés positifs quand ils sont effectivement testés. Donc, ça veut dire que les chiffres qu'on voit à l'échelle mondiale ne reflètent pas les cas suspects en RDC, et c'est quelque chose qui va changer prochainement. Mais pour l'instant, nous devons séparément communiquer sur la situation en RDC pour que ça soit clair, que cela représente aussi un risque pour la population de la RDC, les pays avoisinants et les pays à l'échelle internationale.
Merci beaucoup. Any other question to WHO? Don't see other hands. Oh, sorry. DPA, Deutsche Press Agentur. Mr. Rotti, you have the floor.
Yes. Hello, thank you. I'm sorry if you maybe answered in French already, but I'm going to ask anyway, because you mentioned the cruise ship. Could you explain can you tell us more? What cruise is that? What is the mode of transmission on that cruise? How many people have been infected? Thank you.
Yes, we have information, but it's not complete information, that there was an outbreak of mpox on a cruise liner, which visited 5 countries in the month of November. A patient returned home to a country in Europe and tested positive by PCR for mpox, for which symptoms had developed on the ship. That same person also reported being aware of quite a number of other patients on the ship. However, we don't have a report, an official report, neither from the cruise liner nor from the countries in which that ship stopped at port. And so we don't have a lot of information about what transpired on the ship itself. However, this serves as a warning that events and gatherings still represent risk. That was a themed cruise, primarily men who have sex with men on that ship, as well as crew. And so this represents a risk that gatherings, events can still lead to outbreaks and amplifying events. As people from many countries were on that ship, we don't have the nationalities of the folks that were on that ship, but the report was that there were people from all over the world. So vigilance must be maintained both for clade 2 as well as clade 1, because both viruses are now circulating. So far, clade 1 remains in Central Africa. We hope we can keep it that way, but clade 2 is definitely still causing outbreaks in specific circumstances and in newly reporting countries. However, many countries have stopped reporting. You might recall that the Director General issued standing recommendations in August of 2023, asking all member states to continue surveillance and reporting of Mpox cases. However, many countries around the world do not report or have ceased reporting. So our visibility on the outbreak is less than it was a year ago, but we still have these red flags and outbreaks reported that serve as a reminder that we all need to remain vigilant.
Thank you very much. Questions, other questions to WHO? I don't see any. So I would like to thank you very much, Dr. Lewis, for being with us for this update. And I'll go now to our colleagues of FAO and World Food Programme. We have with us Adam Yao, Deputy FAO representative for Sudan. And he is calling us in from Sennar State in Sudan, and also Lenny Kensley, who is the WFP spokesperson for Sudan, and I think you are in Nairobi. And you are going to brief us on the food security situation in Sudan. I think maybe we start with Mr. Yao.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
We can hear you. Okay. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear
Yes.
and we can see you. Go ahead.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. Today mark 8 months since the escalating violence that broke out in Sudan. The food security situation in the country is dire and has surged to extremely alarming level, requiring our immediate and collective action. According to the newly released Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Projection, 17.57 million people across the Sudan, accounting for 37% of the analyzed population, are facing high level of acute food insecurity, classified in IPC Phase 3 or above, between October 2023 and February 2024. Compared to the previous second projection analysis in June 2023, around 1.7 million people has shifted from IPC Phase 1 to IPC Phase 2. At the same time, the estimated population facing high level of acute food insecurity, IPC Phase 3 and above, increased from 15 million people to 17.7 million people. The most acutely food insecure population are located in states affected by high level of violence, including Greater Darfur, Greater Kordofan, Khartoum, and especially in the three-city area of Khartoum, Bahri, and Omdurman. The Khartoum state, 3.9 people, over half of the population face high level of acute food insecurity on the IPC scale 3 and above. In Greater Darfur, about 5.3 million people, almost half of the total population in the Darfur region, are likely to be on IPC scale 3 or above. In Greater Kordofan, about 2.7 million, 44% of the total population in Kordofan state are in IPC Phase 3 and above. This figure are the highest ever recorded that coincide with Sudan having harvesting season. The food crisis is exacerbated by ongoing conflict, escalating violence, low agriculture production, high food prices, climate shock, and displacement. Factors such as the unstable rainfall condition, the widespread of plant pests, the unavailability and accessibility of agricultural input, and the surge in the prices are collectively contributing to the decline of the seasonal agricultural performance, according to FAO's recently released rapid assessment in November 2023. The assessment also indicated that the production of key staple cereal, sorghum, and millet is projected to decline by 24% and 50% respectively compared to the previous season. While Sudan possesses sufficient land and water resources, the ongoing conflict impeded farmer access physically due to security threat, but because of the lack of financial resources to access agricultural input to resume with their farming activity to produce enough food. The Sudanese people require more support, more than ever. Our immediate action to preserve the life and livelihood of rural Sudanese community is absolutely crucial. The longer we take to respond, the more life we expose to the imminent threat of famine. Funding is of the essence, and swift action is our only shield against this looming danger. FAO stands resolute in its support for Sudanese rural community. Between July and September 2023, ahead of the critical planting season, FAO reached over 1 million farming households or 5 million people to support local food production and sustain a rural livelihood. However, instability and access challenges continue to threaten food security. As we speak, I'm currently in Kosi, and I was planning to travel to Sennar again in Wad Madani, but we were told that there is some fighting in Wad Madani, then preventing us for traveling at the moment. So insecurity is still ongoing, and we're monitoring the situation, and we will continue to update all the stakeholders on the food security situation in the Sudan. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Lenny?
Thank you so much for having me. So as my colleague Adam mentioned, today we mark a grim milestone. 8 months since a horrific war erupted across Sudan, which is showing no sign of abating and continues to spread, as we have just heard from Adam, into Jazeera State, which is Sudan's breadbasket. That's 8 months of terror, violence, displacement, and immeasurable suffering that the Sudanese people have had to endure in what is becoming one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The suffering is unimaginable, yet the crisis has not been getting the international focus and attention that is warranted. As WFP, we are warning of a looming hunger catastrophe by next year's lean season if we are unable to expand access and regularly deliver food assistance to people trapped in conflict hotspots, such as Khartoum, the Darfur region in the west, and the South Central Kordofan region. I was speaking to one of my colleagues the other day whose family can't escape the capital, Khartoum, unable to get past checkpoints to flee the violence. Amid ongoing airstrikes and shelling, they are risking their lives just to go outside to purchase basic goods. Even now, they are struggling to put food on their plates. Yet when the lean season hits in May and food becomes less available, they may be out of options unless WFP can get through and regularly deliver assistance. As my colleague Adam mentioned, the hunger crisis is deepening at an alarming rate, as the new IPC food security analysis shows the highest levels of hunger ever recorded during the current harvest season. And this is a season where typically there's more food available. If there's no significant increase in food assistance, by the time the lean season arrives in about 6 months, conflict hotspots could see the emergence of catastrophic hunger, or level 5 out of 5, the highest on the IPC scale. Again, as my colleague mentioned, nearly 18 million people across Sudan are facing acute hunger right now. Now, that is equivalent to the entire population of the Netherlands, and more than double the number at the same time a year ago. This figure is also higher than the initial projection, which was made for this time period, of around 15 million, which again just demonstrates how rapidly the food security situation is worsening. Close to 5 million people are in emergency levels of food insecurity, or level 4 out of 5. What is most concerning about that is that over 3/4 of these people in that high level of emergency levels of hunger are cornered in areas where humanitarian access has been intermittent and in some areas impossible due to ongoing fighting. Since the start of the conflict, WFP has provided life-saving assistance to over 5 million people, preventing an even worse deterioration of food security, especially in eastern and northern Sudan. Yet this is only scratching the surface compared to the immense needs that we are seeing on ground. My colleagues in Jazeera state, where many people from Khartoum fled to, say they see crowds of people lining up, but there's not enough assistance on hand to support everyone, only those in the highest levels of hunger, meaning that others could also slip into deeper levels of hunger come May. Regular and safe humanitarian access to civilians in areas worst hit by violence has quite frankly been inadequate. WFP has been able to take advantage of momentary lulls in fighting to reach families in Greater Khartoum, but has only managed to reach the capital one time in the last 3 months. Only 1 in 5 people who WFP has identified as most urgently in need of food assistance in the Khartoum area has received food aid since the conflict started. Only 1 in 5 of the people who need it in Sudan's capital have received support because of access issues. Regular convoys of food assistance have traveled from Chad to West and Central Darfur since August, where we have opened up a humanitarian corridor, a cross-border humanitarian corridor. There, we've been able to provide 1 million people, 500,000 people with food assistance. However, people in other parts of the Darfur region, like South Darfur, have not received any assistance at all since June, despite WFP's repeated attempts to obtain safe access. The picture I'm painting here today is extremely dire. And as WFP, we are alarmed of what will happen to the millions of people who are looking to us and other aid organizations in their greatest hour of need. That is why WFP is urgently calling on all parties to the conflict for a humanitarian ceasefire and unfettered humanitarian access to avert a hunger catastrophe in the upcoming lean season. Lives are depending on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me ask the journalists if they have any question on this matter. Yes, Taha Hassan. Taha, this is for AP or Al Jazeera?
For Al Jazeera.
For Al Jazeera, okay. Our correspondent for Al Jazeera. Go ahead.
Yesterday, I called some families from Khartoum, and they said there is a lack of food, there is a lack of food, and they don't have enough food, and they don't have enough water. Are you able to reach these people especially in Khartoum?
Don't know who would like to take this. Maybe WFP? WFP?
Yes.
Sorry, you had another
this for Adam.
For Adam. Okay, for Adam. Maybe.
WFP,
Okay, maybe then WFP, Lenny can add something. So let's start with Adam.
Yes, thank you for this question. I think we have to put it that way. The crisis is deepening, that's true. But at the same time, the support that, for example, FAO provided will reach over 1 million farmers who were able to produce between 2 and 3 million tons of cereal. Those food are local food that are available in the country that are even contribute to reduce the food prices if you do the analysis correctly. Now, the problem that we're mentioning here is that some of the hard-to-reach area like Khartoum, the Darfur, and the Kordofan, where we cannot even reach, as my colleague from WFP said, there is no way you can reach people. Even if the food is there, the logistic is not, there is no humanitarian access, you cannot reach. So that is really where we are appealing for a ceasefire to allow humanitarian corridor to be open so that those organizations who are distributing food items can have access. As for FAO, our appeal is to continue to support the farming community to produce enough food in areas that are accessible in the great area of production like Sennar, Kassala, Kosti, White Nile, and other areas where we still have access to ensure that the local food is available and also where food is not available or where we cannot access, we could also then imagine doing some cash transfer in a way that people can buy locally if there are food in those markets. But the issue really, which is critical, we really need a humanitarian access. We need the humanitarian corridor in a way that convoy can move and access those people in the hard-to-reach area. That is really critical, as my colleague Leni also said.
Leni, maybe you want to add something?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. And as you said, you're hearing reports of lack of food in Khartoum. So first of all, that's what is extremely concerning, is because right now is the harvest season. There are more crops available. There is more food availability. And we're looking at 6 months down the line, when crops become less available, when stocks run out, we could be looking at a complete lack of food in Khartoum. Now, in terms of accessing Khartoum, this has been one of the greatest challenges for WFP. So just at the end of November, we managed to break through and reach into Karari area of Khartoum, where we did distributions for 100,000 people. But as I said, that was the first time we were able to reach Khartoum actually since July. And we also tried to break through and push access through to Jebel Aulia, where fighting has been ongoing, and it was too intense to actually deliver the aid safely. So we weren't able to reach Jebel Aulia, for example. But we're doing everything possible to try to deliver aid when and where feasible. And this is why we are also calling on all parties for a ceasefire, so that these people who are trapped in conflict hotspots, especially in the greater Khartoum area, can get the help they need.
Thank you very much. Any other question? I see Lisa Schlein. Lisa, I saw your message on the chat that you really need the notes of our colleagues immediately. He is on this call, and I hope that, she said just sent before the briefing, so you should have it already. But go ahead, Lisa, if you have a question.
Yes, you're right. I received it, so thank you very much. Very helpful. You're calling for a humanitarian corridor. I may have my facts wrong. I'm getting confused by all of these crises that are bedeviling us, but I believe that recently WFP was caught in some kind of some of your aid workers were wounded. I'm not sure whether this happened in Sudan while delivering aid, even though they had been promised guarantees of safety. Essentially, my question is, you seem to have difficulty in getting agreement by the warring parties for the safe delivery of aid. Can you even trust their words that if they do allow you to deliver aid, that in fact your aid workers will be safe? Thank you. And this must be really kind of very concerning to you.
Whoever wants to start. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Lenny. Okay, now you're
Yeah,
on.
there we go. Now I'm unmuted. Yeah, and as WFP, this is one of our greatest concerns, is the safety and security of our staff. And as we have seen in the past, there have been humanitarian ceasefires announced that were broken sometimes within minutes, sometimes within hours. And so we haven't seen any reliable actual ceasefire in the active fighting zones. And that is concerning for us. However, we will continue to push and call on all parties for that humanitarian access and for that ceasefire. But we know that we're operating in one of the most complex environments in the world. But that is what we do as WFP, is work in these very tough environments and get aid through to where it's feasible, while ensuring the safety and security of our staff and our convoys and the food assistance.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Adam wants to add anything. No? Okay. Any other question?
No, yes. I wanted to add.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that, yes, the situation is complex, as my colleague Lady is saying, but we also have to recognize the tremendous work that OCHA did for the conflicting, to allow the humanitarian actor to access to those hard to reach, some of those hard to reach area. Because we, for example, were able to access with our seed distribution 16 states in the Sudan, but that mainly due to the conflicting in the Jeddah platform that was put in place to negotiate, to allow those actors to stop fighting and allow us to reach. We really will again appeal to all actors to provide support in a way that humanitarian access is provided, and so that we can do our work and reach those people who are trapped in the hard to reach areas.
Thank you very much. Nick, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered, I mean, given the scale, the huge size of the numbers of people that are in need of food assistance, how much food do you need, and are there food stocks? Where would this come from? Is there sufficient sourcing supplies of food available to you to address these needs? Thank you.
Thanks so much for your question. So at the moment, we have just over 30,000 metric tons of food stocks in Port Sudan, which is enough for the food assistance that we have planned for this month. And I just want to go into a little bit how difficult the access is on that question. So we have our food stocks in Port Sudan, which is 850 kilometers away from Khartoum. So we're sending convoys through eastern Sudan trying to get into Khartoum. And this is one of the things that makes it difficult to reach people in these hard places, is that we're coming in from an area that's controlled by the army, going into different lines of control, and that's what makes it extremely difficult. Then back to the stocks issue. For example, for next month, we actually only so far have 50% of the stocks in country for what we have planned for next month. So that's also one of the issues, is funding. So we're calling on our partners and donors to step up. We need $252 million over the next 6 months to provide assistance to around 6 to 7 million people who we have planned for those next 6 months that are in the highest levels of food insecurity. So right now, at the moment, for the next, let's say 2-3 weeks, we have enough stocks in country. But starting in the next year, those stocks may not be enough unless we are able to get additional shipments in, if we get additional funding.
Thank you very much. Any other question? Nick, you have a follow-up.
All right, let me start again. Just to follow up on that, I mean, is there sufficient grain available in world markets for you to find what you need?
So sourcing at the moment has not really been an operational issue for us. I think
Thank you.
that's
Lisa.
answers the question.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. Lisa.
Yeah, as a follow-up, you mentioned that you or maybe your FAO colleague mentioned that no food was getting into Darfur. Does that mean that no food has been able to be delivered from Chad into Darfur, which has been the case previously? And why is that? And then also, are many, because they're so hungry and they're in danger, are many people still fleeing Sudan? Are they even able to flee Sudan because of the to neighboring countries because of the instability and violence? Thank you.
Lena or Adam? Lenny, go ahead.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Let's start with Lenny and then go to Adam.
Thanks so much, Lisa, for your question. So we actually have been able to get food assistance into the Darfur region. At the beginning of the conflict, we actually had food stocks still available in the Darfur region. But then most recently, actually in the last 4 or 5 months, we had a breakthrough where we were able to open up a humanitarian corridor from Chad, Abeshe, Forchana, that's going into West Darfur. So we've had 10 different convoys of food assistance going through. So since that humanitarian corridor opened up, we've been able to support around 500,000 people. And then putting together that with the pre-existing stocks that we already had and distributed when the conflict started, we've reached over 1 million people in the Darfur region. But it still isn't enough because we're not able to reach certain parts of the Darfur. So there are 5 different states in the Darfur. Right now, we've only been able to reach west and east. We haven't been able to provide any support in South Darfur, for example, since June. So this is the challenge, that we're trying to expand and build on this humanitarian corridor in a very complex operating environment where you're not just looking at the 2 main parties to the conflict, but also different armed groups that are control of different areas in different parts of the Darfur. So it's a lot of nuanced negotiations that go on, and a wide array of actors that need to be communicated to and make sure that that line of communication is clear, that the command and control in different areas is clear for us to be able to move those trucks to different areas. I hope that answers your question.
Adam? Oh, sorry. Adam?
Yes, no, just regarding the Darfur, the issue I was mentioning that from June to August, during the agricultural campaign, the planting time, it was difficult to provide agricultural input to the farmers in the Darfur and the Kordofan so that they can produce enough local cereal and support their food and nutrition security. That was what I was referring to. So, but well, now with the establishment of the cross-border operation, I'm pretty sure that some food items are coming from cross-border, and people can certainly have more access. But we need really to bear in mind that one of the key strategies should be to allow, because Sudan has sufficient land and water, to provide assistance in a way that people can produce enough local cereal and be able to strengthen their food and security and resilience. And this is what FAO is doing, and we'll really be appealing for donors to support those initiatives.
Lisa, you have another follow-up?
Yeah, you didn't answer my question as to whether people were fleeing from Sudan, whether they were even able to flee, and also Mr. Yao, how much money does FAO need? WFP told us, but I don't believe you did. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Actually, I had written down to follow up on the second part of your question. So thanks for reminding me. Yeah, so people are still fleeing Sudan. Right now, there's around 6.7 million people who have been displaced since the conflict started. That's both internally and to neighboring countries. Of those, 1.4 million people have crossed borders. There's around 500,000 refugees, Sudanese refugees, on the Chad border, who also are not receiving the support that they need because our Chad operation is also facing extreme funding shortfalls, around $185 million US, and may be forced to cut rations for refugees across the entire country, which would also affect the Sudanese refugees that are on that border. So to your question, yes, people are still fleeing and people still are on the move. And like my colleague Adam mentioned earlier, the conflict continues to spread to different areas. So people have maybe fled once, might be forced to flee again, whether inside or outside the borders. But it's a very, it's an active war zone, and people are trying to find whatever way they can to survive.
Adam?
Yes, I mean, urgently, if I would require, we'll need 75 million US dollars to support local food production. And then we have to get ready because the planting season is coming from May to August. We need to get prepared now. If the resources are available, we'll be able to put the farmers to produce enough local cereal, which will also then contribute to build synergy with our colleagues from WFP. While they're distributing food, we are supporting those households to produce their own food in a way that they can be building their resiliency and be better off even during the lean season.
Thank you very much. Oh, John Zarokostas from France 24 and The Lancet from the room.
Yes, my question is to the World Food Programme representative. I was wondering if you could give us an overview. You mentioned the shortfalls both in Sudan and in neighboring Chad. In the recent global appeal, how much is the World Food Programme asking from donors globally, and where are your biggest shortfalls besides Sudan and Chad, just to put a perspective on the needs and the shortfalls? How much have you received so far this year, and what are you asking for next year? Thank you.
Lenny?
Yes, so I would need to get back to you on the exact global figure because I'm specifically focused on Sudan, the spokesperson for WFP Sudan. So we'll get back to you with that exact global figure. But for the regional response from the Sudan crisis, it's around $650 million US because this conflict is spilling over into, not the conflict is spilling over, but it's impacting the countries around Sudan. So Chad, South Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia, and for that entire regional response, it's around $650 million US. But we'll get back to you with an exact figure on the global needs.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much. I think that was the last question for our colleagues of FAO and WFP. I have looked at the chat and apparently the note have been sent. And I see that James Belgrave is asking John to, if you can send your email, if you can put your email so that I can send it to you. I will do it. We'll put you in contact. Solange can help on this. Okay, so thank you very much to our colleagues for this extensive briefing. I've got a few announcements for you. This afternoon, we expect, to have a stakeout by High Commissioner Grandi. I'm very sorry. By High Commissioner Grandi at the Palexpo. I still don't have exactly the confirmation of the and the timing, but we will let you know as soon as possible. That would be at Palexpo in person as last time, but you would be able also to follow it on web TV. We have a press conference that I think has been announced for Tuesday, 19 December at 9:30, so just before the briefing, and that's on Ukraine's second winter under war, and the theme is also health system challenges and the way forward. That's with Dr. Jarno Habic, the WHO representative in Ukraine. We have heard several times here at the briefing. I also wanted to remind you that there are arrangements in place for next week, just for your, just to recall that starting the Wednesday 20th, included, the Palais des Nations will be closed, and this will be the case until the 8th of January, when we will reopen. So basically the 5th, Friday the 5th, if we look at working days, And on the Monday, 8th of January, the Palais will reopen. As we have told you already, the Palais will be closed, but the journalists will be able to access building S2, which will function normally, which means also heating, but the rest of the Palais will be closed, except for one building, which will be reserved to staff that really needs to come in. So don't expect services, that's what it means. But of course, if there are, and we hope not, important events happening in this period, we will, of course, reopen our facility, including the press room, etc. The last briefing will be on the 22nd of December. As usual, we will make a pause during the season holidays, and the 22nd of December's briefing, because the Palais is closed, will be virtual, as will be the briefing, the first briefing of the new year on the 5th of January. If you have any question on these matters, please don't hesitate to ask. Yeah, I think that this is what I wanted to say, and I see there is a question from Isabel.
Yes, thank you, Alessandra. Just on the statement by Mr. Grandi, are we sure that we could follow it by webcast? Because yesterday, talking with our colleagues of UNHCR, it was not clear at all if it was technically possible.
To the best of my knowledge, and I think I'm pretty correct here, the problem is that you don't have a virtual or hybrid press conference from Parexpo for technical reasons. That means it's not like here you have a Zoom link to which you can connect and ask questions to the High Commissioner. But the stakeout, I think it will be not a full-fledged press conference, but quite a more rapid stakeout, will be covered live by our colleagues at Palexpo and will be put on UN Web TV, the usual address, UN Web TV, where we put all our press conferences. So we won't be able to ask questions, but you will be able to listen to what the High Commissioner has to say. And this was the case also for Mr. Grandi's first press conference on the 13th, and it was the case with Mr. Lazzarini yesterday for his conference on the situation in Gaza. It was available, and is still, by the way, available on Web TV. Lisa.
I'm a technical idiot, but I am unable to open the FAO notes, which is a shame because I really need them. It's sent as a download and it keeps asking me or whoever to go to an app store, and I can't do it, and it's horrible. And can they just send it as a real word processing, a word process?
Don't worry, Lisa. Don't worry. I see the answer key says we'll send you again. And I guess it will be in a clearer way. No,
yeah,
I believe.
in a normal way. I mean, whatever is normal these days.
Okay, whatever is normal these days, as you say.
Thank you.
Agnès? Thank you.
Oui, allô, bonjour. Une question toute simple qui n'a rien à voir avec le briefing, mais sur la fermeture. Ces prochains jours, est-ce qu'il y aura quand même un endroit pour une cafétéria ouverte ou quelque chose ou absolument rien?
Non, non, pas de service. Toute la partie restauration sera fermée. Donc, après, je ne sais pas, il y aura probablement... Enfin, je ne sais pas s'il y a une machine distributrice de produits dans la zone qui est ouverte, mais je ne crois pas. Et vous le savez mieux que moi parce que vous y travaillez. Donc, je ne crois pas qu'il y a des machines de distribution, mais sûrement pas un service avec des personnes. Ça va être fermé. Merci beaucoup. Donc, de toute façon, in any case, we still have in person next briefing on Tuesday. I wish you a very good weekend. And as I said, we'll give you more information on the stakeout of High Commissioner Grandi of this afternoon. Thank you.
Recording stopped.